require assistance and support from allies. So if we take a look at the map, and what we've got is the country of Afghanistan, completely cut off from access from the ocean. On the east, there's Pakistan, and we've talked to the leader of Pakistan. He's pledged full cooperation, and Secretary Powell explained that to us this morning. We've got on the west, we've got Iran. No relief there, pretty hostile. In the north, we've got the former states of the Soviet Union. It's pretty tough. So when we look at this landlocked country, we realize it's diplomacy first right now.
How difficult a job will that be, then, the diplomacy? It seems as if the administration is making some inroads in Pakistan, at least by public appearances.
Well, I think that we are making inroads, and the United States is making inroads there through its diplomacy. But I think also that Musharraf is in a difficult position because he's got strong Taliban supporters, perhaps even within his armed forces. And he's got to weigh off his own domestic political situation as he provides us the support. Hopefully he's got the control and he's got the will to provide the support that the world needs to cut off all assistance to the Taliban and to direct us to Osama bin Laden.
All right, but let's, without getting too far ahead on the military options here, an air campaign and an air campaign alone, in other words, bombing Afghanistan, let's say, where those dozen camps linked to Osama bin Laden are purported to be, that would not necessarily be an effective way to go about this, would it?
Probably not, but I wouldn't want to prejudge it because there may be information that we just don't have access to. I think the National Command Authority is going to make the kinds of decisions based on up-to-date information. If they feel that there's a purpose in going after a military purpose, a significant purpose in disrupting this network by going after their camps, they'll do it. I don't think we're looking at a symbolic strike. The President has said he doesn't want that. So whichever way they go, I think we're going to see a strike based on hard information.
Now, when I talked to you the other day about this, I said, would these be pinpricks then? Is that an appropriate way to describe it?
No, I don't think we should think in terms of pinpricks versus massive, because really what's happened to military technology over the last 30 years is that we can strike precise targets but with enormous force. And so I think what we should be looking at here are precision strikes.
What about the intelligence then, though? Because it ultimately will come down to our ability to, the U.S. ability to define locations. How good is that ability right now without violating any security clearances here?
Well, we always know what the locations are, but we don't always know what's there or where any person is going to be at a particular time. So if we're talking about individuals on the ground, unless there's something that gives us an indicator that they're going to arrive at a specific point, it's pretty tough to predict where they might be. So there's always a bit of a hit and miss in an operation that would be directed at a specific location.
And oftentimes in those operations, the intelligence information doesn't get to the military planners in a timely way, does it?
Well, it depends. My guess is that in this case, it'll get there in a very timely manner. As quick as we've got it, I'm sure they're wired straight in.
All right. General Wesley Clark, thank you for your insights once again. Let's send it back to Paula in New York.
Thanks, Miles. And I'm going to turn to John King now to help us all better understand the importance of what the President expressed in his radio address this morning and what he expressed in the bit of the meeting that we were able to dip into with his national security advisors. John, I wanted to read to you an executive order that President Ford issued in the mid-1970s. It states, "No person employed by or acting on behalf of the United States government shall engage in or conspire to engage in assassination." All right. When you hear the President talks today, he talked about Osama bin Laden being the prime suspect, quote, "smoke them out of their holes." It described to us how these policies in place will either constrict the President or not constrict the President. Is it legal to target Osama bin Laden, and is it legal to kill him if the U.S. government determines he's responsible for this?
It is not legal to specifically target Mr. bin Laden, say to send in a team of snipers to shoot and kill him. That is not legal. This is a debate we went through during the Persian Gulf War as well, when many were critical of the former Bush administration for not having the military go all the way into Baghdad and to go after President Saddam Hussein. But note something else the President said. He said we will smoke them out, but he also said we will bring them to justice. If the goal of the operation is to go in and seize people the United States believes is responsible for these crimes here in the United States, and Mr. bin Laden were to die as a result of the military action, the administration would make the case it was not an assassination, that in whatever fighting took place, deaths occurred. But the president was careful to note the goal of the operation was to bring them to justice. If I could now, and I think Bob Franken is available for us at the Pentagon, if I could bring Bob Franken in right now, I'd like to ask him a little bit more about that. Bob, you're monitoring developments over there. The President of the United States this morning saying, we're at war.
Well, you know,
pretty tough words from the president. What does the president do in such situations?
Well, in reference to what Paula was just asking, I think they would look at Osama bin Laden as a general as opposed to anything else, general being a combatant in what is being described by the United States as the prime suspect, as the enemy. My word, not the president's right here. So I think that there would be fairly easy, the administration would think, to come up with consistency between that policy that was described by Paul Azan from the 70s and whatever action might take place here. Now, the description by that president brings to mind the size of the American force. We have approximately 2.5 million armed forces in the United States, a little less than half of that reserve forces. A very small part of that group has been called up or authorized to call up right now, and for the most part used for domestic work, not for the more extensive overseas action. So you of course have a force that's massively larger than anything that Osama bin Laden would have at his command, but of course bin Laden has the advantage of the terrain in Afghanistan, that type of thing. So you have to wonder if the real most effective actions in the United States would really be by elite troops who are probably already trained in dealing with that kind of terrain.
At the president's side at this meeting today, Bob, and at his side at every one of these discussions, the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney, the Secretary of State, Colin Powell. A little more than a decade ago, they were in very different roles. The Defense Secretary in Cheney's case, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in Secretary Powell's case. From their experience and their plan for the Persian Gulf War, what inferences can we draw about the advice President George W. Bush might be getting today?
Well, you know, it's interesting, I think, because General Powell in particular had been somebody who had fought in the Vietnam War and came out with that, it was generally conceded, with a real caution about committing U.S. troops unless there was a virtual certainty that they would be successful. Here we have a discussion about the fact that there could be casualties, this could be long, it could be arduous, the nation is at war. So General Powell's thinking, at least in this particular case, has gone through, it would seem, a transition.
And the president yesterday signed the orders authorizing the defense secretary to call up, I believe, as many as 50,000 members of the Reserve and the National Guard. Help us with the distinction. Well, as of yet, they're not going for any overseas military action.
What they specifically said in the announcements that they put out is that they would be used for, quote, homeland defense. That is to say, they would provide some of the support. Of course, the United States is really on a remarkable war footing in the United States. Of course, that's something that is culturally so new to us. There are jets flying overhead. There are ships guarding the shores of the United States, etc. No. That type of operation is the type of operation that is going to be supported by reservists and National Guard. One other sentence here, John. The difference between reservists and National Guards are that National Guards are actually state militias who are integrated into the national federal forces. Reservists are, in fact, federal forces all along. It's really just a technical difference, but those are the two aspects of our reserve in the United States.
And Bob, we know you're monitoring developments inside the Pentagon today. Any update at all on the recovery effort outside?
Well, we know that it's proceeding, and it's proceeding very carefully. In a while, we may get some evidence, some visual evidence of what it looks like at the recovery scene. It brings to mind one other aspect, John, that I think is quite remarkable. It's been 4 days since the plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon, and the focus has been on the recovery from that, from the actual damage to the building. Now, however, we've moved back to the regular work of the Pentagon. That is to say, the military planning, which is going full apace and is being conducted in this same building, notwithstanding that airplane colliding into it.
All right, Bob Franken at the Pentagon, we thank you for the latest there. Again, very stern words from the president today, saying they would smoke out those responsible for this. The president also saying we're at war and this will not stand. Now back to Paula in New York.
Boy, John, I still got a lot more questions for you that I want to get to you a little bit later on this morning, so I'll look forward to that conversation. We just wanted to bring you up to date on some of the things happening in New York City right now. On our screen, you're going to see the continuing funeral service for Chaplain Michael Judge, the New York City Fire Department chaplain, who was administering last rites to one of his own, another firefighter, when debris fell on him and killed him.
congregation now sits for the...
Meanwhile, in Arlington, Virginia, hundreds of people are gathered at the Cathedral of St. Thomas More, where Barbara Olson is being honored this morning. Some of you may know that she happened to be the wife of Solicitor General Ted Olson, but in her own right, she was a very strong, well-liked attorney, a woman who appeared frequently on television talk shows, an author. Her husband making an appearance here last night, a painful appearance on Larry King Live. In one of the more amazing stories to come out of this tragedy, Barbara Olson somehow had the presence of mind during the hijacking of the jet she was on to call her husband and alert him to the fact that there were hijackers on board. She described the box cutters they were using and the knives, and was actually asking her husband, you know, what she could do to stop this from happening. Barbara Olson, a well-liked colleague of ours, being honored today at the Cathedral of St. Thomas More. Joining me right now is Linda Perry, another person who is living through the nightmare of this horrible thing that has been dealt our country. Her husband, Rick Thorpe, is missing. Thank you so much for being with us today. Where was your husband at the time of these attacks?
He was on the 89th floor of World Trade Center 2.
This was the, you know, by now we all confuse the South and the North Tower.
The South Tower.
The South Tower. The
Yes.
first tower.
First tower. He works for Keefe, Bruyette & Woods. The first plane hit the first tower. He called me to say he was okay. I saw the TV, saw how massive it was. I called him back. I said, aren't you in any kind of danger? As I was talking to him on the phone, the PA system came on and said, everyone stay put. There's no need for anyone to evacuate.
No.
So
that's what you heard on the
I
PA
heard it
system?
because he said, wait a minute, they're saying something. And it was the PA. And he said, look, they're telling us to stay put. I'm sure everything is going to be fine.
That's ridiculous. He was on one of the top floors.
It was one of the top floors. Keefe, Bruyette & Woods has 2 floors. The floor below him, a window blew open from the explosion from the first tower. They all evacuated right away. His floor did not. The second plane hit his tower. He calls me. I'm okay. We're now waiting to be evacuated.
Waiting to be evacuated.
Waiting.
The evacuation had not even started.
Had not even started.
No, I shouldn't be judging the person on the PA system. No one has ever encountered this kind of situation before, but I'm sure, given everything you know now, it's shocking to you that they would have waited that long to evacuate folks from this floor.
Waiting, 89th floor. He said, go to my neighbor's house. We have a 15-month-old baby girl. I will call you. What's her number? He'd never dialed the number before. Gave it to him. I'm at her house. 20 minutes later, the phone rings. I don't hear anything. I'm like, Rick, Rick. All I hear in the background are people screaming, where's a fire extinguisher? People coughing, someone saying, is anyone unconscious? This went on for about 10 minutes. And I'm just screaming and still screaming into the phone. And all of a sudden, it was like someone just dropped the phone. But then I looked on the TV, and the building came down.
Oh, God.
And I'm just praying to God, praying for a miracle. And I'm really here today to tell, you know, everyone to continue praying, not only for Rick Thorpe, but for all the other 4,700 people that are missing out there. This is just a horrific tragedy, and we need to fight back. It's unfair. I also just want to mention 2 other names of people that my husband was with, Frank Doyle and Brad Vadas. They both called their wives when turns out they were trapped in a room behind a fire door. They tried to escape. They went down to the 87th floor. The door wouldn't open. Frank Doyle called his wife and said, please call 911, call the Port Authority, let them know we are trapped here. We cannot get out. Brad Vadas called his wife and said, I love you, but there's a lot of smoke. I'm doing